Okay, so I'm back again, and as you can see, I've gotten a little more done than I expected. By the way, I apologize again for the background noise, but it's another hot day here in western Massachusetts, and I don't want to melt, so I got to keep the fan moving. Anyway, so as you can see, I did a bunch of work on the Mancubus, and he's coming close to completion. The painting was essentially, again, very similar to how I painted the Cyber Demon, with really minimal differences and mostly just in the details. You know, he's more just skin as opposed to fur, and he's got a lot of detail in his fat rolls there. And again, I've got a super dark shadow and a much lighter highlight. You can see it even more on the back. Let me show you something else real quick. I mentioned yesterday, and you got to see a little bit of the reference for these models, but I thought I'd also show you the sprites. And hold on a second, this is going to get weird. Yeah, okay. This is the reference that I'm using for this project, and you cannot get a better reference than sprites, because they have to show the full 360, because this is what you're going to see in the game, and obviously this was a 3D quote-unquote game, even though it uses sprites. And so it shows you the whole thing from every angle that you would see it in the game, which is pretty amazing. And so anyway, that's my reference, and that's why you can see, you know, I'm using that as the baseline for the project. Something I noticed sort of end of last night was the red coming off of, well, where the hose goes through the arm and where the weapons meet the arms. And so I added that in last night. Oh, and as long as this is sitting here, let me mention that the blood-lettered glaze is a very nice way to get your reds to be super vibrant. I used it on both minis to saturate the reds, and the results are very nice. If you ever use Photoshop, it's just like essentially turning up saturation, and I like the effect. I don't want to use it all the time, but in this situation it was pretty much perfect for what I was trying to do with these guys. Anyway, so for right now, I'm going to be going back and giving the Mancubus the once-over, and I've got to paint his base. And then I'm going to be moving on to the Marine. So he's next. So let me go get that done, and then I'll come back and talk to you later. So I'm not a huge fan of the color scheme for the Marine, but this is what we have to work with. Bright green, gray, bright green and gray are the two primary colors. And so for the base coat on the marine, I went with good old snot green. And that's a good dark mid-tone for this, but as it turns out, when you mix that with a little white, you end up with a green that is reasonably close to the sprites. So that's what I decided to do. And since this is predominantly green, I went ahead and airbrushed the whole thing. And you know what? You really just can't beat an airbrush for laying down a really nice smooth coat of paint. So I use it whenever I can. Sometimes it seems like a pain in the butt to clean afterwards just to do one coat of paint, but when you think about the time it takes to get a nice coat of paint on with a brush, I think it ends up still working out to the advantage of the airbrush in terms of time. So anyway, so I got the green on. I'm going to go in and base coat the gray with a brush and probably base coat the flesh tones as well. There's not too many colors overall on this. The belt, the belt, helmet, knee pads, shin guards are all the gray. Pretty much everything else is green, and then the gun is like gunmetal, dark gunmetal. So that's what I'm going to be doing there. So I'm going to go get to it, and I will be back to talk to you about it. Alright, so what I've done here is I added a sort of mid-range gray, a flesh tone, and of course gray on the helmet. Then I went back and I added a wash of Bealtan green to the green to give it some shadows and depth. And then I made a thin wash of Nuln oil to go over the gray areas. And I made the thin wash mixing the Nuln oil with Lamian medium, which, if you've watched my other videos, you know this is one of my favorite things in the world. But the reason I did that was because I didn't want the full strength of the wash, and the Lamian medium actually gives you an opportunity to still get the behavior of the wash, and yet you still have the ability to change the density. If you just mix water in, you may end up getting kind of a mess. So by mixing in Lamian medium, I get a really nice thin wash, really a glaze, very similar to the glazes that GW provides, but because I'm using the medium, I can make them any color I want. So, and that keeps the medium gray from going too dark. So I also blocked in, essentially all the colors. A couple of interesting differences. The sprites, on the sprites he's got shoulder pads, but on the Mini he's got arm bracers and hip pads. But I try to keep essentially the color, the overall feel of the colors correct to the sprites. So green up above, gray down below, and pretty simple colors. Now I'm going to go in and add snot green back in to bring the green back up, and then I'm going to continue mixing it with white to do the highlighting on it. So I will also need to wash the flesh, and that may be the only place where I end up departing from the color palette from the sprites a bit, because the flesh tones of the marine are essentially the same color as the flesh of the Mancubus and the Cyberdemon. And when they're doing a color palette for a game, you had, especially back then, you had limitations based on, you know, technical limitations. So you would try to share a lot of colors in your palette across a lot of different things. And so I didn't necessarily want this guy to have the same colors in his flesh as the monsters. So we'll see. I'm actually thinking I might try one of the new flesh washes, but more likely I'm going to use one of my, I'll make up a wash of my own devising. By the way, his flesh tone is Skin Tone Base from Joe Sonia, and I'm a real big fan of Joe Sonia paints. And I've got a plum color that makes a really good wash with the skin tone base. So anyway, I'm gonna go get to that stuff, and I'll probably be back. Okay, so I've gone in and I've worked the green. It's essentially about 3 layers, not including the wash, but essentially 3 additional layers of green, starting with the original snot green, and then hitting the highlights with a mixture of snot green and white. You get something that approximates the original sprites really well. So at this point, I'm going to move into the grays. But I just wanted to point out that I actually left the clothing bits alone, making them overall darker than the armor. And even though in the sprites they're essentially kind of a uniform color between, I really wanted to provide some kind of contrast between the armor and the clothing. So that's what I did there, is just sort of kept the clothes at a darker overall feel. So now I'm going to go in and do the gray armor, and I will be back in a bit. Well, I'm back, and I think, let's see, can't remember where I was. I've been highlighting the gray. I did the visor. The visor in the sprites was like, it looked like a really dark blue metallic. So what I ended up doing was taking my mithril silver and coating the visor with that. Then I did 2 different coats of Drakenhof Nightshade, and that's been my new favorite of the washes. I really like the blue-black. It's very interesting, and it's not very blue. It's more black than it is blue, I think, but it gives just enough of a hint of blue to make it you know, almost like a blue steel. Anyway, I thought it replicated the sprite effect very well, at least the colors. You know, there's not really, you know, when you're talking about something that's probably, you know, 25 by 7 pixels, your eye sort of is reading, or your mind is reading a lot into it, what your eye is seeing. So the flesh tones, let's see if I can get this around here. You remember seeing the base flesh, which was Joe Sonia color. Well, I washed over that with plum pink. This was a recommendation from a friend, Plum Pink, who swears by the Josonia paints and uses them pretty regularly. But as far as he was concerned, I thought it was just a little bit too red. I've done it before, and if you go to my Flickr site and look at the Chaos Sorcerer that I did, his head is primarily just those two colors, skin tone base and plum pink, in various combinations. But in this case, I just thought it needed something else. It needed some more color to it, and I chose one of the flesh washes, which seems to be escaping me right now. It is... where is it? Oh, the Reichland Flesh Shade. And it added, I think, just enough yellow to the overall effect that he became a little bit more tanned and a little less ruddy. So I was very happy with how that came out. And at this point, I'm now working on his shotgun, and it's got a bit of metallic on it. The look of it on the sprites is that it's primarily black, almost black and dark gray is about it. But you know, I'm giving the barrel some gunmetal look to it, and I've got a dark gray on the stock, and then I've washed over that with Nuln oil, and I'll probably hit the edges to do a highlight. But you know, if I'm going to stay true to the original art, it's got to be pretty dark. But I don't want to lose the detail by leaving it dark. So that's where I am now, and that's what I'm going to go work on, and I will talk to you in a bit.